tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
All right, let's talk plastics here. We have the federal government unveiling a plastics registry this week. Now, the government loves registries. This comes on the eve of this giant plastics conference taking place in Ottawa, the United Nations. Representatives from around the world are descending in Ottawa. They're all pushing for a plastics treaty. And when all of this comes up, they say they're going after plastic pollution. They don't want a plastic straw to end up a poor sea turtle's nose, which I'm sympathetic to. The problem is that a lot of the regulations that tend to flow from these sorts of discussions target countries that have nothing to do with the plastic pollution issue. The federal government in Canada championed a ban on single-use plastics, which was, of course, overturned by the Supreme Court. But even to this day, Stephen Guilbeault is defending it. Take a look at this clip.
Does this pushback against the carbon tax and now we see really high gas prices that Canadians are very concerned about, does this show perhaps to you that Canadians may not be embracing a green agenda, a sustainable agenda as firmly as you would like?
The support by Canadians for what is happening here is tremendous. I mean, the announcement that our government made in 2019 on banning single-use plastic remains, if not the most popular announcement that we've done since 2015, certainly one of the most popular announcement in terms of the public support for it. So I think that the public wants us to take action to fight plastic pollution.
So he's still defending this even to this day. And I'm a little bit concerned about what's going to come of this big confab over the next several days here. I want to talk about this in a bit more detail here. Joining me now is Aiñe Curran, who is the president and CEO of the Vinyl Institute of Canada, which is not dedicated to old records. But Aiñe, it's good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So let's start with what is at stake here. I mean, what are the goals that the Canadian government has and the UN has coming out of this session this week?
My goodness, that's a huge question, and there isn't just one answer. But ultimately, the idea is that somehow the plastics industry will come to the table. They will solve all the litter problems in the world. I guess, they're looking to see if they can get some kind of a global agreement. But as you know, John, there's a lot of countries around the globe, and every country has a different social structure, different economic structure. So it's going to be challenging to, I think, bring this agreement to a place where there will be harmony. At least in the next several years, it's going to take a lot more than 5 years or 5 years or less than to put something as complex as this together.
Well, and I mentioned in the lead-in to bringing you on the show here, there's always been this tremendous problem when plastic pollution issues, which are significant issues in other parts of the world. There is an issue in Asia in particular with this, and I think there was a study a couple of years ago that had said virtually all the plastics in the ocean came from, basically they could track the rivers they came from, and almost all of them were in Asia, a couple were in Africa. It's not coming from North America, it's not coming from Europe, but those are the jurisdictions when these regulations tend to come down the hardest. So we're basically paying the price for a problem that literally has nothing to do with us.
Well, first of all, I don't know that I would say that it has nothing to do with us. Okay. As first world countries, we manufacture a lot of materials, not just plastics, but a lot of materials that are then shipped one way or the other to second and third world countries. So I think that
just to be fair, you don't think it's enough to focus on our role on the disposal of it and the waste management?
I believe that there is a point where you just have to acknowledge that if you are creating litter from anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, that as a manufacturer, you're going to step up and try to innovate, because we all know that in innovation, your last guest just said, from innovation comes a lot of great opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I 100% agree with that, because we're already seeing a lot of movement in the plastics industry worldwide. we're already seeing, companies like the vinyl industry, Dow Chemical, Nova, BASF, like all of these big organizations worldwide are innovating, and they are seeing the opportunities that are possible. And I think one of the challenges I think that the industry has is that there are target dates that are set to accomplish certain types of benchmarks as per the United Nations, as per various governments around the country. But the timelines are not reasonable. And I think that's one of the things that we're looking to do. I mean, we as the Vinyl Institute of Canada, we are partners with Environment and Climate Change Canada. We just launched a medical PVC recycling program with them in 2020 in the middle of COVID. And just today, we've just announced the expansion of that in Toronto, and we're also hoping to get that into Quebec as well. So they're partners with us. They've been partners with us on environmental performance agreements. What we want to see is more messaging and more will from the government to collaborate with industry. And I don't know that we're seeing enough of that yet. We're starting, but the United Nations is a global body, as you know, and I think really it's difficult to when you're various countries. It's just difficult to get to that place of harmonization where we can all sort of toe the line, as it were. So I don't know that the answer is just for us to ignore all of the litter in the world, but definitely I think we as an industry, we are definitely showing that we are moving forward. We're environmentally forward. And sometimes I don't know that that's being communicated as it should be by these types of conferences. I was at the INC3 conference in Nairobi. And, one of the challenges that I feel that we have is the plastics industry, for example, are invited to be observers at these conferences, but we're not invited to be at the table, to actually be part of the negotiations. And with respect to the plastics registry that you just led with, we've worked with Environment and Climate Change Canada on helping them to, identify how the supply chain works so that this particular registry can work efficiently and can work so that it's a win-win for everybody. We need to get more collaboration from the government. We need, our governments are elected, our taxes are paid based on building waste management infrastructure. And to your earlier question about second and third world countries, they simply don't have waste management infrastructure. You're not going to see waste management infrastructure in Africa, for example, or in India, for example, simply because their governments really haven't prioritized that over, the history, the linear space of time. And not only that, they just don't have the funds to really put that in place in terms of the infrastructure. So I believe one of the things that eventually will come out of all of this discussion about plastics is we will provide, I think, more of a education and some guidance and leadership to help these other countries to get into a position where they can actually develop their own waste management infrastructure. And I think that ultimately is going to be the outcome and the goal of all of this.
You mentioned, I think, a very important distinction here, which is that you're allowed to observe, but you're not at the table. So you're on one hand given, I think, that token inclusion as a stakeholder, but you're not actually consulted on or consulted with in a meaningful way, it sounds like. And what is it they're missing? I mean, if industry is leading here, and you've already got, by the sounds of it, through your organization anyway, relationships with the federal government, why is it that they're flipping a switch when it comes to a summit like this, where they're going to ink a treaty that will at some point trickle down into domestic policy? Why are you being cut out here when you do have a seat at the table in other ways, it sounds like?
I think, so there's 4,200 delegates registered here in Ottawa this week, right? And I don't think anybody has the answer to that question. I mean, I think many different organizations have asked for the opportunity to be at the table. Certainly, when you look at, global corporations like Dow and global corporations like BASF, certainly that they are able to have direct dialogues with some of the very senior folks at the United Nations. But at the end of the day, the folks that are on the ground are the ones that really make the difference in terms of execution. And I think that's really where, unfortunately, I wish the United Nations would be a little bit more broad in terms of who they're inviting, and take advantage of the expertise that's in the industry that could probably help them to achieve a really good agreement at the end of the day. But I think that there's a lot of information that's really being missed there, and that's unfortunate. And again, the timelines are quite short in terms of treaty times. Most treaties, I was told in an interview that I had with one of the representatives for Canada to the United Nations, explained that most treaties can take 10 to 15 years. And so when you look at sort of some of the branding that's gone on through this process at the United Nations Environmental Program, it's high ambition. That's the positioning. And the high ambition means let's try to get it done in 5 years or less. But the complexity of it, regardless of whether it's plastics, regardless of whether it's any other material in the world, I think it's beyond high ambition. And I don't know that it's entirely realistic. And I think what's happening is, when you're sort of boots on the ground at these particular events, I think one of the things that's really great about these types of events is that we do, as an industry, have an opportunity to meet and network with people. But I would like to see more. I would like to see more effort from the organizers, the United Nations, to invite us to educate, all of the folks that are there. And I don't know, maybe that's going to take another treaty, another day, but I just see a lot of lost opportunity. And the plastics industry really, they hold all of the supply chain intelligence, in terms of the accuracy of how things happen. And sometimes I look at some of the things that are being proposed and think, it's just not logistically possible with everything the way that the infrastructure has been established, over the last, 80 to 100 years. And, which raises another point. I mean, we pay taxes. Citizens of Canada pay taxes for the government, whether that's federal, provincial, or municipal, to build waste management infrastructure. And I think 80 years later, to not have included plastic, since it became a commodity and products on the market servicing, millions of people in the public and business and commercial, industrial. All of a sudden, 80 years later, we're talking about waste management infrastructure, but we're really not getting, again, that sense of collaboration, that depth of collaboration that I think we really need to have in order to make it all come together. So,
all right. Well, great insights on this. We'll be keeping an eye on what happens this week. Let's hope they get you your seat at the table sooner rather than later. Aiñe Curran, President and CEO of the Vinyl Institute of Canada. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.